All right, welcome into another edition of Sports Spotlight. I'm Sports Director Alex Eisman, of course, joined by my buddy reporter DeShawn Johnson. I wish there was a little more excitement to talk about with this week's episode, but that's how it goes sometimes. The Lions went out in the divisional round on Saturday to the Washington Commanders. DeShawn, you and I were both there. I guess now that we've had a couple days to sit on this one, what's your reaction to this loss?
Honestly, I said, you mentioned being there, and I think, not just us, but a lot of the media, just in the press box and everything kind of felt the same way. It was still really hard to honestly grasp and believe that had really even just happened, A lot of anticipation for the Lions this year. And I think, now having a couple of days to process, it's a hard, word I find to describe it, because I really look at last year as a heartbreaking season. We made it obviously to the NFC Championship and we're very close. I kind of beat ourselves in that game, and then you come around to this year and it feels like heartbreak, and it's also like the only other word to describe it. It's just it's disappointing.
Yeah, especially after such a historic season. You get the 1 seed, you get that playoff bye. I've been seeing, and I'm not gonna not place the blame on Jared Goff, some of the blame on Jared Goff for this game. I mean, turning the ball over 4 times, it's unacceptable. But the people out there who are saying, "Oh, this isn't the Lions quarterback of the future. This isn't a guy who can take them all the way." He was not the problem in last year's playoff run. We've been able to see him perform at a high level in those high intensity situations and do well. The San Francisco loss wasn't his fault. So I understand the anger and frustration with how he played, and he didn't play well. He cost them the game with giving Washington the ball 4 times. But to say that he's not the guy moving forward is, especially when there are so few truly good quarterbacks in the league. It's premature, and I think he took the loss as hard as anyone too. You saw we were together in the press conference. I mean, he was crushed. This means a lot to him.
Absolutely.
So I think that's something that I was thinking about these last few days. Is it was a bad performance, but he still has the ability to go out and win games like that.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. Obviously, you see, all the things people are saying, immediately after the game, and then obviously social media and whatnot. There's a lot of takes, obviously, and it's still fresh. So I kind of get, the idea. It's unfortunately the way some sports reactions have worked for a little while. There's kind of got to be like a scapegoat on this, but I think one thing that we can't forget about, because I agree with you. Jared didn't have a good game. But for me, it's hard to define someone's, season and honestly future with a team off of a single bad game, because we also seen great performances from Jared Goff this year, 18 for 18, multiple, 200-300 yard games where he's just flawless. So I think it's hard to, immediately give up on the guy. And, one thing that we can't forget is just where our defense and the condition that it was, going into this game. I think that, because that had obviously been a topic for us for the over the back half of the season, and you win that game against Minnesota, and you obviously have a great defensive performance, but you got to, those are 2 different offense. One, towards the back half of the season, looking a little bit more potent in the Commanders than the Vikings do. So I think a lot of people kind of just, wanted to push that issue to the side once we got past the Vikings game, and maybe aren't considering that too much, for this game, because that's where obviously our next biggest issue is. 4 turnovers from, your QB, 5 turnovers overall is obviously not going to win you any games. You pay double giving the football away in the playoffs, but our defense was, if we're able to make a couple different stops in situations, the 12 men on the field, there's a lot of answers to to kind of go towards when you think about what went wrong, and I don't think that Jared Goff deserves all the blame there.
No, he doesn't. The 12 men on the field on a 4th and 2 inside the 5, just a critical point of the game. It's inexcusable, and I think anyone on the coaching staff will say that and take responsibility for it. But I mean, that one was on them. They needed to have the right guys on the field at that moment. The defense as a unit 6 plays of over 20 yards in that game, just a lot of explosive plays. And that's the second most points they've allowed all year. 45. Mm-hmm. The only team that allowed more, or that the Lions allowed more to, was Buffalo. Yep. So it really was a collective effort, but neither side of the football was playing at their best. That's without question. And going back to it, it was an injury-riddled season, and that has to be taken into consideration. Some of the best players, particularly on defense, were not out there playing. Kevin Zeitler wasn't out there playing on offense either. Mm-hmm. Like there's still like things outside of the guys who are on the field's control that were at play there. And I know it kind of sounds like an excuse, but Aiden Hutchinson was tracking to be the defensive player of the year. That's a game breaker. Absolutely. That's someone who changes the game. And Zeitler, an experienced offensive lineman, giving Goff maybe more time to look at his options, make it his second, third read instead of trying to force the ball. Like, there's just things that it impacts, and it's not the sole reason why they lost. But like we're talking about, it's just a combination of things, and it's unfortunate that that's the way it played out. But at the same time, you got to give credit to Jaden Daniels in Washington.
Absolutely.
For a rookie quarterback, he's unbelievable.
Yeah, no, it's clearly the best rookie season I feel like, I've ever been able to witness. A couple other rookies have kind of been in his position before, making it to the NFC Championship game. But obviously the odds are stacked against the Commanders team that before coming into this year was, on the lower echelon of tiers as far as teams. And I don't think anybody maybe besides Commanders fans themselves, I'm sure nobody would have told you that they were expecting the Commanders to get into the playoffs, let alone, win a playoff game, win 2 playoff games, and make it to the NFC Championship. So I think we are all witnessing, potentially one of the greatest rookie seasons ever. And so that's not, it's no slight, to lose to a team that obviously they're going to be on track for the NFC the next couple of years. So I think it's good, that we're able to see them now. Obviously it didn't go the way we want to, but, we're going to have to, the thing with the Lions, turning their program around is that now we as a fan base are going to have to continue to, just build with the team and see how things go. And I think this is a good stepping stone for us. We've played some really good teams this year. We've obviously been able to come on top of a lot of them, and just not coming on top of the big game. We'll be able to use that towards next year. And more than likely we'll be seeing this Commanders team again in the near future. So
for sure. And the title window certainly not closed for the foreseeable future. I think that's something fans need to keep in mind. It's something I've been keeping in mind for sure. Even with me and you trying to process this loss too, is like this is a good team. We're going to get into that in a sec, but the pressing news today, Ben Johnson introduced as the Bears head coach, former Lions offensive coordinator. The reports were coming out on Monday. They made it official. He's with the Bears, and now it seems like Aaron Glenn is headed to the Jets as well. So Lions losing both coordinators. Terrell Williams, D-line coach, also headed to New England to become the defensive coordinator there. So now there's a little bit of rebuilding on the coaching staff. I guess what are you thinking about those departures, and is there anyone that you have in mind, particularly for those coordinator roles?
As far as just, the reactions to the departures, it's specifically to the departures, I feel like there's kind of like two sides to it. This is another thing with the Lions becoming one of the more premier teams in the league is that, this league is a business, and coordinators, on really good teams, that it is, their usual number one goal to, get the opportunity to be a head coach somewhere and continue to, kind of flourish their coaching wings, a little bit. So of course I am super happy for both the guys. I think, it's not like it's breaking news as far as, we were expecting this, weeks out, we had been talking about, Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson both being top tier candidates for this year. So, as far as that aspect goes, I'm super, super happy that both those guys get a chance, to go flourish and have, obviously been able to start with this program and, really build off of it. So I'm super happy happy for that. The other side of it, it is a little tough, it's seeing Ben Johnson obviously stay within the division. I'm sure there's a lot of talks there. And I mean, like, it's, like I said, when you think about it on the business side, you don't want to be like mad or upset with the guy. But, I mean, like even what we've seen, like with, Detroit Lions, great Matthew Stafford, it's a love-hate relationship in the fact that, you love the guy and you love to see his success form on. But when it's against the Detroit Lions, you have to continue to root for your home team. So I do hope that Ben is able to flourish and, kind of show what he's got going on over there. He's offensive minded, and that's a strength of the Bears that it could be a strength of the Bears. And I think if anyone can figure anything out going on over there, it would be Ben. However, when we
twice a year though.
Yeah, twice a year.
No.
Absolutely. The same thing goes for Aaron Glenn, of course. The fact that he's not within our division. I don't know. We'll have to see schedules in any time, but of course, anytime we play the Jets, it's the same thing. We can't be friends in that moment, but I'm still super happy for both those guys seeing that they get their opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's definitely. Deep down, I'm sure for a lot of Lions fans, a little, maybe a lot feeling of betrayal with Ben Johnson heading to Chicago. But I would suggest watching the first couple minutes of his press conference with the Bears today. It's on YouTube or the Bears website or wherever. It's clear how much the Lions in Detroit means to him. You get into coaching to become a head coach. At the end of the day, he's realizing a dream of his. I know you and I both wish it wasn't with the Bears, but right. He still is. But he cares about Detroit, and he also he did not throw the Commanders game. He was not checked out.
No,
he was trying his absolute best to get the Lions a win. So, some stuff just didn't work.
Yeah. I'm totally with you. Ben, regardless, how it feels with him leaving, Ben obviously also kind of did gracefully stay with the Lions when he had opportunities to leave, last year, potentially going to the Commanders, so I am very grateful for the time that we've spent with him, and so I have no true ill will towards him. I'm super appreciative of everything that he's given us, but it's like you said, 2 times a year we can't be friends until the final buzzer goes off and we figure out who comes away with the win. But I'm sure it'd be nice for him and Dan to go head to head with one another. It'd be really nice to see, and of course that'll make even what is already exciting NFC divisional games even a little bit more fun. So, and then to go off your question about if I have personally anyone in mind, a couple weeks ago, Dan Campbell had addressed, that he's already expecting this. So I'm kind of just, I don't have, I would say a specific name in mind. I'm just trusting Dan's process, because we can't forget that, he bears a lot of responsibility, him and Holmes for what they've been able to do as far as putting together his staff and everything. So I'm trusting the process here. That's the same goes for the off season. We've got a long time ahead of us now to make some decisions, starting obviously from the coaching level down into the roster.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's some there's a possibility that some of these promotions might come from within. I think particularly on offense, Scotty Montgomery, running back coach, associate head coach. Obviously, you've seen the prolific season that the Lions running backs have put together, and a guy who has learned under Ben Johnson for a couple of years now, being able to kind of draw from what he does well and expand on already this amazing rushing season that the Lions have had. So that might be a guy to keep an eye on. I know Hank Fraley, O-line coach. What more is there to say? O-line was stellar this year. So if they choose to go with the in-house route, I think those are probably 2 candidates that could get a look. Defensively, before we're talking about the candidates, I also want to shout out Aaron Glenn for just what he did with a makeshift defense, guys on IR every week. He put together a heck of a season, put together some great game plans. Of course, that Vikings game is the one that stands out, Week 18, where he made Sam Darnold look like Sam Darnold with the Jets. That was masterful. So shout out to him too. The guy that I'm really interested by, to be honest, is Robert Saleh,
Mm-hmm.
bringing in a Michigan native, Dearborn guy. It didn't work out for him as the head coach with the Jets, but you saw how dominant the San Francisco defense was when he was their D coordinator. It seems like guys love playing for him, and obviously he's this would mean a little more to him, I'm sure, to be able to come home and coach the Lions. And the other guy that I've been seeing some stuff about is Kelvin Shepard, linebackers coach in Detroit right now. Another guy who has high praise from everyone who talks about him. And again, the benefit of bringing a guy in-house is that you do get to learn from Aaron Glenn, who is so good for him. So, yeah, I think there's several options for him.
Absolutely.
And I trust in Dan Campbell. I trust in Brad Holmes that they'll choose the right guys, that they'll choose the right fit, and they'll choose coaches who are good at developing, and the players love playing for them and want to play hard for them, for sure.
Yeah, I think we have a set culture in Detroit now, and just I do think bringing a guy in, that's kind of been able to follow the path lines along with under Ben Johnson and under Aaron Glenn, and I also think that it's interesting, like you talk about Robert Saleh, obviously a Dearborn native. You mentioned the head coach stint not working out, but I remember talking to you, right around that time happened that there's a lot of talks, just bringing Saleh in and having him be, a part of Glenn's staff. So like you said, I'm kind of just trusting the process on this one. Obviously it's like, not just to us, but it's been a big topic, obviously, to, to Holmes and to Dan Campbell. They understand what they're going to have to do and to continue to, build the culture that we have for this team so far.
For sure. And, as we now look towards the 2025 season, since this one is officially over, there's, as much as it hurts right now, there's so much promise with this team being healthy, everyone coming back. It's everyone important coming back. I know Zeitler is a free agent, and it would be great to bring him back. Yep. Carlton Davis is another guy who would be really nice to have back in the defensive backfield. But for the most part, like, this core is returning. Another year of growing together. Just what's kind of your assessment of what the Lions will look like in 2025?
I don't expect major changes or a major reset because going off what I just talked about, I think the biggest part about, this Detroit Lions team is the culture that's set there. And you hear a lot about from players, after whether, selected out of the draft or being traded there. Detroit may not have been their ideal destination a couple of years ago, but you hear them do the interviews now and they talk about, once they get introduced here and the things that they learn and the, the immediate family feeling that they have and the gritty feel that obviously the Detroit Lions have built, the kind of like their play style off of. So I don't expect, major changes as far as any of that happens. I think, the one thing that we're going to have to continue to look at is just, how to extend our defensive life, our defense's life, because it's not that we didn't have the guys there, you go into the final couple of weeks with 13 guys on the IR. It doesn't get worse than that. But Dan talked about it, I believe, yesterday, there's obviously – I don't think they expected things to happen so soon, of course. So, you really got to start getting into it now this offseason, the moves you want to make and everything. And he mentioned, it's hard to think about exactly what this team may need right now with the fact that, we were hitting on multiple levels, even when we had a lot of the defensive injuries first start to flare up, Aiden being the first big one, the defense was able to sustain and continue to do what they were doing. It's just, one hit after another, and things kind of start to unravel a bit. So I think the biggest look is kind of just going to be, of course, bringing in some more guys. I think maybe the most important, kind of like group that we would have to bring in would just be, our rotation guys on the defense, really try and focus on, if we're going to have these injuries again, who are we going to be able to bring in? Because that's kind of like was the biggest topic for the Lions, a lot of undrafted guys playing on the defense, and it worked out for us in multiple times. But, once you get into playoff football where the games become a lot tighter, you got to have some of your better guys on the field there. So I think that'll be kind of the biggest focus for the Lions, moving into the season. As far as like major offseason moves, I'm sure they're going to kind of have to weigh those out a little bit. Like you mentioned, a lot of our guys, they're young, still on contracts for another year or two. So I'm really hoping that things are, we're able to kind of run things back for the most part.
For sure. I agree with you. I think defensively, really everywhere except safeties. I think there's enough safety depth where you can lose probably both of your starting safeties and still have guys who are able to replace and play well in their absence. This was interesting for me because I saw this morning that Khalil Mack is a free agent and is choosing to return he was debating retirement, choosing to return. And if he's not trying to play that much longer, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? You have a defense. You got your star, your cornerstone on the defensive side of the ball coming off a major injury. And obviously you want to keep him healthy for the long run. You got Zadarius Smith on the other side of DN, older. And, how much longer is he going to be able to keep up? He was great this year.
Yep.
You don't know how much longer he's going to be able to keep up production. You've seen that with older pass rushers. They get rotated out more, so they're fresher and can still give you really quality reps out there on the D-line. So being able to add someone like Khalil Mack, who I know a little bit of a down year numbers-wise for him this year.
Sure.
The year before, 17 sacks. Like, he's still got it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know there's the whole thing with the culture fit, and they're only going to bring in guys who fit the culture. But I feel like if he is one of those guys, you got to go after him because then that makes your D-line that much more dangerous. It's been a struggle for the Lions this entire season, getting home on pressure, especially after Hutch went out. And then you have those three edge rushers. You add McNeil back healthy, Reader in the middle. That's devastating. And then you have Onwuzurike, O'Connor in the middle as your depth pieces. Like that is super intriguing for me. But even if you don't get Mack, this D-line is still going to be one of the best in the league.
Yeah,
with just those four guys.
Absolutely. No, I like, saying Khalil Mack and him being on the Lions, that just sounds like, it does sound a little bit like, so obviously, like you mentioned, he's obviously more on the veteran side of things, but even, like with the fact that we have a lot of young guys on our defense, going over there and obviously, helping us as much as possible physically, but even, mentorship wise, being able to pass the torch along per se. I think that would be a great idea for our defense, especially I think, if you start looking at veteran guys, that'll teach you more of the tips and tricks of the game. Khalil Mack, obviously coming off an injury now, but, he a sustainable career, multiple big year seasons. I'm sure he knows a thing or two about, just protecting his body and everything like that, as a hard hitting defender would be. So a lot of options, maybe the only other place I can think of, first of all, I have to say that, like Terry and Arnold, I only expect him to get better. Amik Robertson, we've seen a lot from him, but, just depth, filling in depth positions where we can. And, obviously the corner was a big one for us this year. It really hurt to see, Robertson go down against the Commanders. Like that was the low point for us in that game. So, like I said, it's depth and really trying to, just continue to build the culture for these guys that you mentioned.
For sure. Yeah. And, like we said before, Davis is one of those vets like you talk about who I'm sure has helped Amik and Terrion tremendously this year. I think that would be not just on-field play, but off the field in the locker room would be a big guy to return. Very interested to see how Rakestraw develops. I know he didn't get to see the field a lot this year because he was hurt, but it's a second-round pick for a reason. I think it'll be, Arnold he was trial by fire this entire season. Yeah. Like they threw him right into the flames and
got him in there.
We saw the PI issues earlier in the season. Feels like as the season progressed, though, started becoming less of a problem. So I'm super excited to see his development. Safety duo, one of the best in the league, if not the best. And then the linebackers, when healthy, fortunately, Jack Campbell stayed healthy the whole year, and he was a huge factor. We saw the difference Anzalone made, particularly in that Minnesota game. And got Rodriguez back, got Derek Barnes back. Just hopeful that it doesn't turn out to be as freakish of injuries and just being decimated off the rip like they were this year. But yeah, offensively, I mean, it's going to be the same, especially if you bring Zeitler back. But if not, how well did Christian Mahogany play in that game against Washington?
Filled in for him, and I mean, he only doing exactly what you ask of him. He's obviously filling in a big position, and I thought, like you said, obviously, if we have some of our original guys like in the lineup there, maybe Jared gets enough time, but to be put in a position like that, short notice right there, you're playing that week. I mean, I thought the performance was, more than well enough, especially for him not seeing a lot of the field this year.
Yeah, highest graded player in the game, 6th round rookie. I mean, that's very hopeful, and of course, you want to have a little more O-line depth. I think there's a lot of different directions that they can go in the draft, and we'll find out in the next few weeks and months what the free agency moves are.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still the pieces are there. That's the bottom line. The pieces are still there to go on a title run, and I know. This one is going to motivate them. This loss is going to motivate them going into next year. I don't think it's going to be perfect, especially as you're breaking into a new coaching staff.
Right.
But I'm ready to have patience, and I'm ready to trust in what Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes are doing. There's this team, when healthy, it can be special for sure.
Absolutely, the foundation is there. Going back to like the Super Bowl window and kind of still these fresh reactions coming off of Saturday. The window is still wide open for us. The foundation has been laid obviously by Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, and the rest of the higher ups of this organization. It's been laid to a point where we have a bright future ahead of us. I know that obviously Detroit Lions fans have kind of been dealing with a lot for the past 2 decades, so when these things start to happen really fast and everything, you kind of worry that we could burn out or anything like that. But I don't think that this team is built off of, kind of like that win now idea and then like reset after. I think the culture, that we've talked about behind this team, the grit, it's all set for a sustainable future. I think that obviously the Lions are tired of being, that lower echelon team. And, we've seen what they're able to do these past couple of years. So I don't see it. I don't see things, kind of reverting for us. And I can only hope that, we continue to build on the cycle that we're on.
For sure. I know it's hard. Just got to have faith right now that they'll finally be able to break through. I believe. You believe. We all need to believe.
Definitely. That's what it means to be a fan. That's what it means to be a fan. And I know we haven't really had the chance to have a lot of heartbreaking losses and 2 back-to-back. It's but no. I mean, we've got time. We've got time.
But that'll do it for us. I had a couple days to digest this loss. Being able to look forward to next season and be excited about the future feels good, even though it still kind of hurts right now.
Definitely.
But that'll do it for us in this week's edition of Sports Spotlight. We'll excited to see what the Lions do. And as always, go Lions. I need to start testing my vacation time off before I